Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to Spectrum 360's second webinar dealing with housing. It's entitled and it's under Housing Options for Adults on the Autism Spectrum. And part two is going to deal with rules, regulations, and financing. And we're very, very fortunate. We have two incredible individuals that have really devoted their lives to it, to housing in general for those less fortunate with the greatest needs. Diane Riley, who is the Executive Director of Supportive Housing Authority of New Jersey, and Tom Taranto of the United Way of Bergen County, who has been responsible with developing so many housing developments for individuals on the autism spectrum and with disabilities. My name is Dr. Bruce Ettinger, and I'm the Executive Director of Spectrum 360. Spectrum 360's mission is to provide the highest quality, you want to go to the next slide, please? The highest quality education and therapy for children with learning, language, social, emotional challenges to achieve their maximum potential as responsible adults in society, and to serve as a leader in promoting innovative educational programs. Our population is basically individuals on the autistic spectrum and with related disabilities, ranging in age from 3, and our oldest is in the 40s. Our programs include Academy 360 Lower School, Academy 360 Upper School, which also includes a young adult program up to 21, Independence 360, which has 2 campuses in Livingston and Whippany, serving adults over 21 with autism and related disabilities. We have a film academy that holds 50 young adults that learn all aspects of editing and video production. And actually, they're going to be having I think it's in a week or so, it'll be on our webinar. They're going to be doing a film festival at St. Elizabeth, really showing the creative work that our young adults on the autism spectrum do. We have a culinary academy as well. So we have many innovative and comprehensive programs. All right, next slide. This is the second in our series of 4 workshops. Last year, our workshop, we had attorney Lisa Pauls talk about the housing crisis. She talked about some of the challenges, but also some of the changes in legislation and some of the opportunities. And by the way, that session is available. You can get it on the Spectrum 360 webinar website. It's still available if you want that. This is our second. Next week will be our third. It's entitled Innovative Family-Driven Supportive Housings from Idea to Implementation. And we have speakers from director from Willow and from CoHome that are going to share the way they, in a very innovative way, they opened up housing. And what interests is that some of our adults are in their housing projects. The 4th session is going to be on October 6th. We're going to have another innovative housing model to continue that. And we'll have a speaker, Brad Walker, who's associated from Next for Autism, that's going to present another model of creative housing. And at that 4th session that might interest you, a number of our speakers are going to be coming back for more Q&A. Then on October 15th, we're going to do a very important session led by Don Brown to talk about smart ways to secure the financial future for your loved ones in the future, how to handle your money and set up trusts in a way that they'll be open to receive all the benefits. So we really encourage you to participate in one, have your friends attend as well. And again, recordings will be available on the Spectrum 360 website. Before I introduce our first our speakers, I just want to tell you why these workshops are so important to Spectrum 360. The number of young adults we serve and adults is growing, and there's a serious concern and interest in our families for the future and how to secure housing. So we feel it's part of our strategic plan that it's very important that we do these workshops to really educate the parents to start planning and learning about the changes in laws and resources available. I'm very pleased to announce that we've gotten funding for this from TD Bank and from the Helen and Walter Mintz Fund. And you know, we've restricted this money, and we're going to use this to continue providing future seminars and workshops in the future. Okay, please, any question you have, please save them for the end, and we have a chat room where you can write in your questions. Okay, at this point, it's my pleasure to introduce Diane Riley. Diane Riley, currently, since she's the executive director since 2017 of SHA, the Supportive Housing Association, and SHA, just a moment. And SHA is a statewide nonprofit organization. It was founded in 1998. Its mission is to maintain and support supportive housing industry in New Jersey, serving people with special needs. They provide resources and services to their membership, which includes over 100 different organizations, including nonprofit and profit housing developers, service providers, state advocacy. They've also been very involved in advocating for innovative and systems change to provide more flexible funding and opportunities. They educate policymakers, elected officials, and people living with disabilities. I had the pleasure of attending the session last year where there was well over 1,000 people, and I've never met so many enthusiastic or committed people to housing and to concerns of individuals that require it. Diane has been a leading voice for the economically disadvantaged in New Jersey. She joined the Community Food Bank in 2011. She led a coalition of stakeholders to raise awareness about hunger, engage in public dialogue, and influence policies that addressed underlying causes such as housing. In March 2016, she was recognized by the New Jersey General Assembly for her service, leadership, and commitment to improve the quality of life for citizens throughout the state of New Jersey. Prior to joining the food bank, she worked as the Apostles House, a nonprofit agency providing emergency shelter, transition, and other services to homeless and at-risk families in Newark. And she's currently a member of the Board of Trustees of the Anti-Poverty Network of New Jersey. She's a leader and someone that's responsible for so much change and so much caring. We're very fortunate and appreciate Diane being here to share her knowledge and her expertise and her advisement. Next slide, please. We also have the pleasure of having Tom Toronto here. Tom has been responsible. Tom is the, his 40 years experience working with the United Way in Bergen County, Burlington, and Hudson County, working as a volunteer and a staff member of the Bergen County United Way. He's transformed his organization into a nonprofit affordable housing developer, building very special homes that affect the lives of individuals with developmental disabilities, older adults, and working with families seeking homes they can afford throughout Northern New Jersey. To date, he's worked on 22 separate housing projects, has completed 20 more projects in development, partnering with the United Way of Bergen County and Madeline Corporation. He manages all project development, including site acquisition, new construction, renovation, revitalization, property management, and social service coordination. He serves on the board of SHA, New Jersey 21-1 Partnership, and the Suez North American Foundation. About 6 years ago, I had the pleasure of meeting him and visiting a project he completed in Allendale, which was amazing. He's been doing things all over the country. He's an innovator, he's a creator, and he's creating a lot of opportunities for housing. And he's continuing to do more. I know he just shared with me before that he's doing a new project in Fairfield. And you know, as Lisa Paul said last week, there's more funding available and there's more opportunities. So we're fortunate to have Tom, and we need more people like him to open up and provide housing opportunities for the critical number of adults on the autistic spectrum and with other disabilities. I want to thank you for being here, Tom. Okay, next slide. All right, I turn it over to Diane.
Okay, thank you so much, Bruce. We should be reading your bio because we're in excellent company and we're really grateful to be here. And thank you to Melissa, who was herding the cats to get us to this point tonight, and we're the cats. So thank you very much. I think, you know, what I'm going to try to do tonight is frame the whole concept of the housing dialogue. And then I think you'll be in really good shape to hear all of the experience that Tom brings in actually creating housing, and then you further your other speakers furthering those conversations on innovation. So today is going to be some kind of basic info. Okay, I can start my video. I just thought it might be a little more useful to you know, have it be just focused on the slides. But I think we're going to talk a little bit about concepts and a little bit about funding, the big pieces of the puzzle. And then I'm going to turn it over to Tom. So that's what I hope we can get out of tonight's conversation. Next slide. Okay, so first I want to tell you what supportive housing is, because we throw around a lot of terms. Affordable housing is one term, and that is a piece of the puzzle because we need housing to be affordable, especially for people with lower incomes. And if you're disabled, you probably do have a lower income. But supportive housing is so much more. It is really the idea that people with disabilities and challenges need services in order to be able to live independently. And with those services, which are very unique to what they need, and with the right affordable housing, they can live very independently. And in communities all over the state, in neighborhoods next to you and me. So that's the idea of supportive housing. Now, people who need supportive housing are not just people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. There's all sorts of people who need supportive housing. But each of those has the same kind of component. They have housing that is affordable, it's accessible, they have a lease, they have tenant rights. All of these pieces of the puzzle come into play with supportive housing. And our organization works with supportive housing primarily. Next slide. Who needs supportive housing? Well, a lot of people need supportive housing. People who are homeless, coming out of homelessness, people who have mental health challenges, people who have addiction challenges, people who are aging, seniors need supportive housing. They need different kinds of services, right? People who are physically disabled, and those people need different kinds of services depending on their disability. Veterans oftentimes need supportive housing. We have people coming out of prison who we need supportive housing for, because all of these people need a certain kind of service to remain independent. And without those services, they might be challenged to remain stably in their housing. Now, we're not just one thing, right? I'm a woman, I'm a mother, I'm an executive director, I'm a lot of different things. Well, you know, different kinds of disabilities kind of can coexist. So I might have a veteran that has mental health challenges, right? Or a senior who has physical disabilities. I might have someone with intellectual and developmental disabilities who has behavioral issues and is a senior. It's a mix and match. So it is, it's important to understand that we're not sliced off in this pie. It's really, really a very fluid pie. And it's also important to understand that when you advocate, and I can't say this enough, we're really advocating for all people to have the kind of services and affordable housing and affordable homes of their choice that they can have. And we want to advocate for everybody, right? We don't want to slice up the pie differently. I don't want to cheat the senior housing so I can have more intellectual and developmental disability housing. I just want a bigger pie, right? That's really what we want. So I want, I can't say that enough. I really want you to understand that. But supportive housing is for all of these populations, and SHA deals with all of these populations. Next slide. So why supportive housing? Well, we found out years ago that just providing affordable housing is not the answer. And as Tom would say, years ago when we looked at homelessness, we found out that it was important, very important, to provide that housing first and then get the services they need to remain housed. And that stability of housing actually created their quotient of success, right? If they were stably housed, they had a better chance of being successful, because that the security of that housing gave them peace and gave them health. And so that created a bigger portion of the population that had success in coming out of homelessness. And I would then say that played into all kinds of other understanding of how health and housing is related, right? Those are very important. If I'm stably housed, I'm definitely healthier. If I'm in safe housing and clean housing, I'm definitely healthier. If I have that kind of peace of mind, I'm definitely healthier. And if I'm stably housed, I'm not going to cycle in and out of other expensive programs, because at some point, we are using a lot of publicly funded programs. And when we cycle out of stable housing, we use a lot more money, okay? A lot more money in those publicly funded programs. So while we like to say, we're fighting for everyone's rights, disability rights, I will tell you, it's nice also to have the win of it's cheaper in the long run, right? Because that is what's gonna get the government to move on creating more housing, because they can see the success of that financially and economically. So there's a good reason to provide supportive housing, in addition to the fact that we want to see everybody be independent and live their dreams, right? We want both of those things. And we can do it with supportive housing. Next slide. Okay, so if you just click one more time, and again, we'll just put all the pictures up. I want to talk a little bit about the kinds of housing that we find in our populations, and it runs the gambit from a traditional home that might be a group home, your traditional one-story home that might have 4 people sharing, living there, to independent apartments in a large complex that might have people with disabilities and might have people who aren't disabled at all. We also have people who share apartments. We have people living together. Some people might be disabled and some people might not be disabled. We have families creating housing that share their living expenses. So there's those type of things. We also have very intense medically specialized places to live, and that could be, it can even be in an apartment or it can be in a group home. Even people with severe medical needs can live in a community, can be with people that they form a community with that are mixed in the middle of an urban setting, or it can be in a suburban setting or even a rural setting. We have housing that is purchased. So we have all kinds of different opportunities for housing. And Tom's going to really talk to you about a couple of his projects, many of his projects, which are beautiful. But I also want to point out that there are services that are needed in order to get people out of institutions, right? Gone is the idea that people who are disabled need to be in an institutional setting. We've blown that apart. And most of the people, and the government encourages your ability to move out and go and become as independent as you want. If you look at this woman, Fran, she was living, and this is common too, people living often start out with living in home with supports. They live with their family. But when I hear people all the time, I get calls from people where that doesn't work anymore. And sometimes, unfortunately, they wait until the parents are too old, really. And and something happens in order to get more into the mainstream and get connected with more intensive services that they might need and more independent opportunities. I'll get a call from someone who says, Susie lived with my mother, but now my mother passed away. And now what do I do? How can I get Susie into housing? This is a picture of Fran. Fran actually lived with her aunt most of her life. And she was very happy living with her aunt, but her aunt passed away. And then Fran, because of the shock of that and because of the destabilization of that, Fran began to decompensate. She got depressed, her health declined, and she became more physically disabled, and she wound up in a nursing home. Fran didn't need to be in a nursing home at all. So tapping into her community, her support system, and trying to find out what Fran really wanted. Well, she wanted to live independently. So her support system began to explore opportunities she was eligible for, and turned out she was eligible for some services, some medical services from Medicaid that were there specifically to move her out of an institution, because Medicaid's very expensive for people living in institutions. They want to get people out of institutions if possible. Fran was able to take advantage of that. Fran was able to get an apartment that was accessible, and she became much healthier. She began to engage in the community, in book groups. She could live independently with some supports coming in. She didn't need 24-hour supports anymore. And Fran really changed her life. So that is possible. And exploring all of these options and getting at what the person really wants is so important. And then figuring out how they can get that. Sometimes takes years, but you can get there. Okay. So this is a little bit about SHA, and thank you, Bruce, for teeing that up. We are a nonprofit statewide, and our members are not families, they're organizations. So our members are various organizations that either build affordable housing, they provide services for people with special needs. Our service providers serve people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, mental health, addiction, all of those very different service providers. They're all part of our network. And I think our value add really is getting all those people in a room together, quite frankly, because by sharing our shared interests, our shared policy interests, our shared needs, and because we have to work together with supportive housing, right? Those service providers need to know the developers, and the developers need to know the service providers. We actually mix and match quite well, and we actually create those opportunities, also funding opportunities. So part of our membership includes financial institutions like Valley Bank and various other people, TD Bank, PNC, various partners, financial institutions, because financial institutions do have an obligation to help the community. That is part of their charge through the federal government's and encouraging them to do that. We'll just say encouraging, not making them in some ways do it. They are looking to engage with communities in low income and disabled communities, and they help us greatly. So we have those people as partners. Again, they're in the room too. They're in the room. We also have the Council on Developmental Disabilities, and I will say that we've gotten a number of grants, which is probably why many of you might know SHA, because we've done a lot of grant writing with the council, and they've given us projects where we create resources for, specifically really for families with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So we have a lot of resources, and I'll talk about them in a minute. So they're a strong partner. And also then I would say the state entities, very critical for us in terms of our advocacy, to hold them close as partners. They're not members, but they are our partners. So we work closely with the Department of Community Affairs because they provide funding to our developers. They provide vouchers to our tenants. We work closely with them. The New Jersey Mortgage Finance Agency is a critical partner. They are the people who manage the tax credits. They are the people who fund our developers, and we'll talk about some of that funding. They are the people who put all kinds of procedural hurdles in place, and Tom can tell you about that. We need to advocate for more, not looser, but a more streamlined way of doing business. And we're always trying to work with them, and they are a strong partner. And of course, Department of Human Services, where we get all of our services. And that, spans mental health, addiction, all of that is under the umbrella of the Department of Human Services. So those are definitely critical partners. And what part of the value add of SHA is that we advocate with those partners for a better industry, a better supportive housing industry. Okay, thank you. All right, this is our website. I wanted to point it out. And specifically our housing hub, which is where we house all of that special information that I was mentioning. The Council on Developmental Disabilities, our very first grant was to develop a housing guide. Probably many of you have seen that. It is about 70 pages. And we have given hard copies of that out, 7,000 copies, and it's been downloaded thousands of times. It's in Spanish and English, and it's on our website. And it is still a viable document. It does give you some idea of the housing, even across the US and in other countries, that has been developed. It does talk a lot about different pieces of this puzzle that we're talking about tonight. And it talks about specifically about housing. Probably one of the best things in that guide is the flow chart in the middle of it, which basically gives you a step-by-step guide of what to do first when you become an adult, when your child ages out. So I think it's really a great resource. Some of it is outdated, and we've created individual bulletins, which I'll mention tonight and talk about, and those are under resource bulletins. We have videos, which I'll show you a little bit about tonight, and then we have some other resources. One of our newest resource is a tool that will hopefully, as we build up opportunities in that tool, will help you search for housing. Now, we do need people to send us the opportunities, so it's just getting off the ground. But there's a little video. If you go, it's under here, it's Housing Hub, it'll say housing tool, and you'll click on that and you'll see the website. You can search by municipality, by county, you can search by type of housing. So as long as we get those opportunities, we'll post them, and hopefully we'll be another place you can search for those opportunities. And this just happened about a month ago, so give us some time to build it up, and we will provide more of those opportunities for you. But all of this exists on our website, so get familiar with that, and have a good time. Okay, all right. So how does supportive housing work? Well, there's really three discrete pieces of this puzzle. One is the capital finances to help Tom build his projects, right? So Tom builds his projects because he has enough money to do that. And that's through the capital financing to build supportive housing. And we're going to talk about that little piece, just the laying the groundwork. And then a very critical piece for us and for our tenants is they need, usually need a housing voucher, because most people who are developmentally disabled are in that 30% bracket, you know, of a very, very low income. So when I say 30% bracket, I mean of the median income of a given area, right? So it's a very, very low income group. And because of that, they need a housing voucher to be able to pay just a portion of the rent. The other portion of that housing voucher is then going to be paid by some government entity. And therefore, Tom is not going to be out the whole financing of their monthly rent, right? So anybody like Tom, anybody doing development, if they've got people with vouchers, they're going to have enough money to maintain their housing. And that's a big piece of supportive housing, maintaining that going forward, paying their mortgage, paying all the underlying things you need in a house, right? So that housing vouchers are a critical piece of the puzzle. And then, of course, you need Medicaid. We need Medicaid to provide those supportive services. It is a federal match with the state, so we need the state to agree to those the varying degree and expansion of those services, and who's allowed and who isn't, because it is a 50-50 match. How much can you absorb? But the federal government pays for a lot of that, and that's through Medicaid, really. So we do need all those three pieces in terms of being able to have a supportive housing opportunity for you. And that's why we, as I said, we work with the Department of Human Services. We have to. We work with the federal government and Centers for Medicaid, right, and Medicare. We work with the state and community affairs who talk a lot about these vouchers, and we work with the HMFA, who's going to put together some of those developmental financing opportunities. Okay, so affordable housing is a term that I just want to review a little bit about, because we say it a lot, and this is one of our bulletins, by the way. It's on our website. It's only a couple of pages, but it does go over some terms about affordable housing and what that actually means. So affordable housing is housing that where the rents are below what they would call fair market rate, right? Fair market rate. Every area has a fair market rate threshold, and that and affordable housing means they can't charge more than that threshold. Now, why is that? Well, that is actually something that has been somewhat subsidized by the government, or a government has given you a certain amount of benefits in order to build that housing. And that's why it is able to be maintained as affordable. We need affordable housing. It's not always supportive housing. So affordable housing exists for people who just simply don't make enough money. They don't need services. They just don't make enough money. So that exists. But that's really what we talk about when we talk about affordable housing. I would say that, you know, we were really fortunate. It's talked a lot about the Mount Laurel decision, but, you know, in the 70s, the courts decided that every town had an obligation to maintain a certain amount of affordability, that you could not just build everything to what the market would bear. And so it would become so unaffordable for everyone, that as long as you were building in that town, there had to be a certain amount that could be zoned for affordability. And because of that decision, and because of the fight that we've had for 40 years, really, every town does have that obligation. And now you're looking at Tom being busier than ever, right, Tom? Across the state, because finally, we've gone and fought through the courts, and towns have to do that obligation. And so many towns now and municipalities in New Jersey are settling their court fights, and they are developing plans for affordable housing and how they're going to maintain that affordability. So they have obligations, and you're seeing that playing out now across the state of New Jersey, where towns are having those obligations, and they're deciding finally how they're going to adhere to them, what they're going to build, what types of housing they're going to build. And Tom will mention why this kind of housing is supportive housing for, is really a win-win for towns. So, and he'll talk more about that. But towns really have to do that. And that really is helpful, because that means that you might be able to live in where you want to live. And not just in affordable housing ghettos, right? So way back in the day when I was working for the Apostle House, they had agreements. Newark was allowed to sell. Other towns were allowed to sell Newark their affordable housing obligations. So what happened? Newark had a lot of affordable housing, and other towns had zero or very little, right? That's not allowed anymore, because that's not community integration. That's not integration by economics, right? It doesn't have an economically diverse community. And so that's very, very helpful. And on top of that, it then does create not diverse communities all around, right? Not through race or disabilities or anything else. So we're at a good point in our history, I think, that we are required to build a certain amount of affordable housing. But affordable housing is there because the builder or the government has given some kind of accommodations to that builder in order for them to build that. That's really simply what it means. Next slide. Okay. So what kinds of funding do we have at our disposal? Does Tom might have at his disposal? Well, one is tax credits. And tax credits, I'm gonna probably Tom's gonna cringe when I say this. I'm gonna say what when I think of my simplistic way of a tax credit and what that is. So the government says, if you have this coupon, you can sell this coupon to a business that might need a tax credit. They might need a tax break. And that's very, good for you, because you'll get some money, and they'll get a tax break, and we'll get some housing built. So the government actually has a certain amount of these coupons they give to the state of New Jersey, and then people apply to get them because they're really lucrative for a development, and they're able to actually fund some of their housing developments from that. But it's really just that. It's a tax break that is sold, and the developer reaps the benefit of that. I think it's just a very simple, much more to it, but I think that's all we need to do is say it that way, right? So those are very important, and they're very good. There's only, we have 9% tax credits, and there's only, a capped number of those. And then we have less lucrative 4% tax credits. But those usually come into play with supportive housing. The Department of Community Affairs manages some funding that is used for housing, affordable housing. One is they manage the funding from the national government on the National Housing Trust Fund. And that is a fund that is a yearly fund given out to states. It is funded through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, so it's not a budget. You don't have to go through the federal budget to get that. So that's not going away. It will fluctuate based on mortgages, but it is a set amount of money. And I remember advocating for the National Housing Trust Fund when I worked for the Apostles House, because it didn't exist. So we're pretty excited. We've gotten it for about 5 years. So that's one little pocket of money. Another is the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which existed for years, and then it sort of didn't get funded as much and wasn't used for development capital financing as much. But the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is about $60 million. It is in the state budget, is still in the state budget. They've kind of reconstituted that over the last year. I don't think anybody has seen the whites of the eyes of money yet, but it's there and people are starting to apply for it. And that's a good thing. Home funds is something from HUD. Home funds is available through the federal government, and that comes through counties. So that's a pocket of money that Tom might talk about. HMFA has funds. I'm going to skip over Federal Home Loan Bank, but HMFA has some really, really good new funds. One new fund that just came out in March of this year, right before the week before COVID hit. We were basically unveiling this new special needs housing, special need housing subsidy loan program. And that is a new fund that HMFA created. It's $50 million. They created out of their own budget. And that is specifically for special needs housing. Some of the other things I've been talking about, not just for special needs housing, it's for affordable housing. But this fund created with HMFA is for special needs housing. We used to have something like it, and it actually spurred a lot of development many years ago. We had $200 million. It was through a bond issue, but that money was depleted. We'd like to still go after something like that again, you know, in the future, because that would be more money. But right now, this is a pocket of money we do have. They also have something unique called the Specialty Partnership Loan Program. That's other money, but that requires a municipal match. And Tom maybe was going to talk a little bit. Not the easiest thing to get, trying to advocate for broader municipal match, but they would like the municipalities to get skin in the game, to have skin in the game in order to fund that. And then we have Federal Home Loan Bank, which is a partner, and you can apply for their loans, and of course, regular bank financing. So this is all that the kind of financing of construction that Tom deals with every day. It's mixing and matching some of these that creates the housing. Not easy, but it's there, and that's what all these things mean when you create housing. Okay. I just wanted to show you a little bit about what affordable housing is. This is the fair market rate. So it is by area, and it is by type of size of the apartment. So that is the limit as to what could be charged, and that's why we say it's affordable, right? There's a limit to what could be charged. And then on top of this, I'll just say that there are sometimes set-asides for very, very low income, which requires less of money, and 50% of the median income, which allows you to charge a little more, and 80%. All those are a mix of what would still be considered affordable. So I just kind of wanted to show you what that looked like and what kinds of ceilings there are for size of apartments depending on the area. One recent development that's pretty exciting is something called small area fair market rates. And that's important because not every area, but there are fair market rates by zip code in some areas in New Jersey. Why is that important? Because you'll never get an apartment in Montclair doing it the other way, because Montclair is a more expensive area to live, right? But it's not, you shouldn't have a ceiling of rent that's in Newark, right? Because those are two very different communities lumped under the same area. So the federal government finally started really drilling down and looking at areas, and they're doing it by zip code in some areas to make it to make more opportunity for people to live where they want to live. And it's very important for our population, our group, because your circle of support is where you want to live, right? You want to live in your circle of support, and that might be in an area that might be a general higher income area. So you want to definitely check out the small area zip code, and it's a trend. So I'm hoping that this is where we're going with this. to make it truly, truly integrated throughout the state. So, next. So let's talk about housing vouchers, because this is a big piece of the puzzle. As I said, it's very important for Tom to get his money out of the rents. So if we can have a win-win where the tenant's only paying a small amount, the government's paying a larger amount, Tom's still getting his money to maintain his housing, that's the best of both worlds. Also want to be able to take that housing voucher and go and live in an apartment that's just being rented, you know, anywhere. So housing vouchers play a critical piece in providing a very diverse area for you to rent and having it be affordable to you. So let's talk about them a little more in depth. So a housing voucher says that you're only going to pay 30% of your income on housing, right? So if your income is $900 a month, your rent is going to be $300 a month. That's a pretty good deal, right? Because the rent could be $1,000. But a housing voucher says, I'll only pay $300 a month. The other $700 is going to be paid for by some government entity. And Tom's still going to get his money. The landlords in the building I want to rent to still going to get their money. So it's really kind of a win-win. There aren't, you know, there's not one for everybody. So that's the challenge, right? That's the challenge. But rental vouchers are critically important. They're going to give you those operating dollars. Okay, next. So there are a couple of different types. They kind of all work in the simplest way in what I said. 30% of your income goes to the pay your rent, and the rest is going to be paid by somebody. So there's about 3 different types of housing vouchers. One is through the Department of Human Services. It's actually through DDD. It also can be through the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. And those are supportive housing connection vouchers. They're the simplest vouchers to get because you're going to get that through DDD. And you have to, you know, work with your support coordinator to get one of those. But they're the first and probably easiest voucher to get. Those are what they would consider temporary because they'd like you to actually apply for one of the other vouchers so that they can, in the state, give that money to somebody else because the state's paying for that out of their budget, right? So the state's paying for that out of their budget. They'd really like to palm that off on the federal government. So they'd like you to apply for a Section 8 voucher or another voucher and then give your voucher to somebody else and get it out of the Department of Human Services budget. But that is a voucher that is for you. And until you get another one, I think you're keeping your voucher. Okay, and it works that way. A HUD Section 8 voucher is paid through the federal government. The difference between those vouchers is sometimes they can be project-based, so they might be on one of Tom's projects, and you can't move those vouchers. Or they might be tenant-based, and you might have one of those vouchers, and you can move around. You can even move to another state. That's really the benefit of that kind of voucher. You can move to another state with one of those vouchers. They are usually done through housing authorities in your community. That's who manages them, sometimes the Department of Community Affairs. And then we have state rental assistance vouchers. Those are sort of like all the others, except they are paid for by the state, by the Department of Community Affairs. We have 4,000 vouchers like that. Not every state does, but we have 4,000 of those. Difference between some of these is the HUD and the SRAP vouchers are just, can be really for anyone. The supportive housing connection vouchers are really for people in IDD or Department of Mental Health. So that's the difference there. Okay. And then finally, you need your Medicaid dollars. I'm not really going to go into this, but you're going to be signing up for one of these programs depending on your eligibility and the timing. Sports program, community care program, which provides additional support dollars, and then the MLTSS specifically to get out of a nursing home kind of dollars there, and that's a lot of supportive services dollars there. So generally you'd go on the supports program until you got to some kind of top of the list to get the CCP program, assuming you're eligible. And the more money you have, the more you make your daily living work, really. That's really what is that's about. And I'm not going to really talk about this because you're probably going to have a whole webinar on that. So how do you put them together is the key piece here. Next slide. Okay, so I want to show you one of these, and then I think probably we might want to turn this over to Tom, and then if there's more time at the end, I'll show you the other one. I think this, this video really pulls a lot of the terms we've used and various pieces of the puzzle together. So let's play this. If it plays. Oh, yeah. Oh, you can't hear it. Okay. So you know what? It's because, I think it's because you have to check something when you do put that link in that allows you to hear it through the video. And I'm trying to remember how that's done. But if you want, what you can do, Melissa, you're doing the slides. It's possible if you get out of the slideshow, you can just go on our website and play it, because you have to do something when you play it. I'm trying to remember what that is. It says allow computer audio or something through the slideshow. When you share your screen, maybe. But anyway, it's on our website, so we'll quickly get to that, and we can play it. I think you can just play it from there. It's in the screen sharing piece, I think, when you share your screen, that you have to say you're playing the video or something.
Yeah, optimizes sharing the sound.
Yeah.
Let me see if this works. Okay, there's some issue with the audio device, so I'll share that with the audience, these videos afterwards, so that everyone can watch that.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, we can do it at the end. They're good videos, so it kind of pulls the whole concept together. But let's go on.
Okay. All right, let me pull up that. Sorry. Okay, we're back.
Okay, you can go on to Tom's then. So
I'm up. Hello, everybody. Tom Toronto here from Bergen County's United Way. A great job, Diane. Certainly covered a lot of bases. I would say to everyone that this is a particularly fertile time for affordable housing development in the state. Because of some of the things that Diane mentioned, some of the changes in terms of the regulatory environment, with now the umpires, if you will, of housing development and compliance by municipalities with their affordable housing obligations now being done by Superior Court judges at the county level. The Superior Court judges have really amped up the momentum, requiring towns to really address what they are going to do and how they are going to address their affordable housing obligations. So for you as a group of parents, one of the things you may want to do is to investigate your own municipality. Go on the website, the borough's website, see if they have something called a settlement agreement. That's an agreement with the courts about what they plan to do to address their affordable housing obligation. You might have an opportunity if you can engage in conversation with a councilman, a mayor, a member of the planning board to advocate for the inclusion of supportive housing. Oftentimes, I shouldn't say oftentimes, but governing bodies and planning boards are not always aware of the populations that can be served in affordable housing, and sometimes just think about family supportive housing or senior supportive housing. So I would add that all of the projects that we have developed, and we're up to 28 now, all those projects have been ignited, if you will, by a conversation by a parent in a given community with a mayor or a member of a governing body which started the ball rolling, leading to a development. Melissa, if we can just jump to the next slide. What I'd like to do is just to take you through a couple of our projects. If you can go to the next one, if you don't mind, Melissa. Right on top is Forum Park. This project on Park Avenue in Forum Park is 7 small apartment buildings on 8 acres and 1 4-bedroom group home. There are 36 2-bedroom apartments, 26 1-bedroom apartments, and the 4-bedroom group home. All of it supportive housing. The application for this project is up right now on our website. We have about 80 applications that we've received so far. We just got today our CO for the group home, and we expect CO for all of the apartment buildings before the end of the week. So we're particularly excited to have this project now come online. This project checks a couple of boxes that Diane had mentioned. Behind our development is a Pulte home development, an age-restricted market rate housing development that came with an affordable obligation. By building our project, we are fulfilling the affordable housing obligation that Pulte would have had on its site. In addition, we also added more units into our project to address Forum Park's unmet need in their overall town-wide affordable housing obligation requirements. So the combination of the market rate developer desirous of moving their affordable obligation from their project to our project, the municipality willing to tolerate that and encourage it if we would also take on additional units that would help them in terms of their overall housing obligation. So a win-win, if you will. In the Rockefeller Group, the overall developer of the green at Forum Park, where we are housed, where our project is, helped to knit it all together because it's good for their business, it's good for the community, and a personal commitment as well, in that a senior executive with Rockefeller Group at the time also was a parent. So Pillar, New Jersey, formerly the Cerebral Palsy, CPNJ, will be the service provider for the group home. And the independent living apartments will be a mix of folks with support budgets with a variety of different service providers. And we also just last week brought on board a full-time housing services coordinator who will be resident, not living there, but working on premise to make sure that everyone has an ability to interact with the broader community and to develop and foster a sense of community within our development. We've also made linkages to all of the surrounding businesses, Summit Medical Group, the Jets headquarters, the team, BASF, Realogy, Archer Hotels, the OV, also Fairleigh Dickinson University, who have all made commitments for employment opportunities and other kinds of interactions with the residents. So this is an example, Forum Park, that is of a project that fulfills a number of different requirements and needs at the municipal level and at the market rate developer level. If we can go one more slide, I believe, Melissa, ahead. I want to get to, on the bottom here is Harrington Park, a project under construction right now. And this also is an interesting mix. This is a 4-bedroom group home, an independent living apartment, and 3 family affordable apartments above in Harrington Park. This project also similar to Forum Park in the sense that those 3 family apartments satisfy a need that Harrington Park has from a regulatory perspective in terms of its affordable housing obligation. The group home and the independent living apartment are a result of a negotiation with Allegro Senior Living, which is redeveloping a site for a market rate assisted living project in town. And conveyed their affordable obligation to our project. So the combination of the municipal support, Allegro's contribution to us, and some additional financing allowed us to build this project. And one more, if I may, Melissa, one more slide ahead. Still one more, if you would. I'm trying to get to Ridgewood because that's a pretty interesting project. One more, keep going if you would, keep going. Boom, there it is. So on the bottom is a project that's under construction right now, which is also another municipal partnership and involvement with a market rate developer. So this project is in the downtown of Ridgewood, New Jersey. You know, a lot of activity in that downtown. We are actually taking the second floor. This is actually a two-story building or three-story building. The first story is actually structured parking underneath. We're taking the second story of this building, 13,000 square feet, and we're in the process right now of converting what was formerly commercial space into 2 group homes and 6 independent living apartments. So a lot of effort in terms of creating a fire separation between the commercial space that remains below. It's actually PNC Bank's private wealth management offices, and then our residential use on top. You know, we love this project. A lot of work, a lot of expense to take what was commercial and convert it to residential. You know, an expense that's you know, appropriate because it needs to be safe and secure, and there's a new elevator, refashioned stairwells so that there's appropriate ingress and egress in addition to the elevator, but literally in the downtown of Ridgewood. So we're going to have opportunity, access to all types of amenities, employment opportunities, a train station, transportation, bus lines, just really, we think, a home run of a project. And this project, stimulated by a growing sort of trend in many of the municipalities that we're seeing in the northern part of the state, the Access for All Committee. If your community has an Access for All Committee, this is a group of volunteers designated and formally recognized by municipalities to help aid in terms of the coordination of services for people with physical and intellectual developmental disabilities who may live in a given community. And these committees, these Access for All committees, have become quite a force, not only in helping to get projects started off the mark, but they also become important value-added partners in terms of programming and support for projects that have been built in helping our housing services coordinators to get folks integrated into the community and involved in community activities, and the broader community involved in activities in our different projects. So you know, to come back to where I started, you know, the good news is that there is an extraordinary amount of activity at the municipal level, governing bodies looking to try to figure out how to address their affordable housing obligations. That's the good news. The challenging news is that the challenging part about that is that often these negotiations, conversations sometimes happen in closed session because they're viewed as part of litigation or part of real estate. So it's sometimes difficult to, it's a bit opaque to try to figure out what's going on. But I think that you will find a receptive political leader willing to talk with you because they have a problem that needs to be solved. If there is a possibility that a development can help a constituent in the community, and certainly supportive housing can do that, I think you would find somebody willing to listen and understand. And from that spark, frankly, is how all these developments that you see that Melissa has gone through on these slides started. And by the way, this project tracker is available on our website if you'd like to you know, take a closer look at each one of them. And in addition to the application for Forum Park, we also have an application for an 85-unit affordable senior housing project in Fair Lawn, another 13-unit affordable senior housing project that's under construction in Mahwah. So, we are committed and passionate about supportive housing, but we build all kinds of affordable housing. And as I mentioned earlier, and I think Diane also mentioned, because of the requirements and the needs of particular municipalities, we're doing a lot more of mixing populations very successfully: seniors, family, and special needs individuals, and veterans as well. So it can be there's great opportunity, I think, out there. The challenge, of course, is always putting together the financing to get a project built. But somehow we find a way to do it. And just to finish, and Diane mentioned it frequently about Tom getting his money. These are all affordable rents that we are collecting. And as the landlord, if you will, and the property manager, our job is, of course, to maintain the property. And to give you an insight about how nervous I am about the upcoming winter, as an example, with Florham Park, we created a new street for that project called Independence Way. And just yesterday, I signed a contract for snow removal, which I have to tell you was pretty stiff. And then in the contract, if we have an 18-inch snowstorm, it's going to cost about $20,000 in snow removal. So that's a pretty big number because it's a pretty big project. It's about the biggest number for snow removal we've seen. So I have a real heightened interest whenever there's a weather report, because it can be a significant blow to our operating expenses. So operating these projects is from a landlord perspective is difficult. The reward comes from seeing how people thrive and flourish. Often the need for service, particularly in the independent living apartments, how the need for service diminishes and people become more capable. So with that, I think we've gone a little bit past time, and I'll stop. And I think we wanted to open it up to Q&A.
Yes, thank you. And I think, Tom, if I could have you just turn on your video real quick, and
Sure.
Same with you, Diane, and unmute you, that'd be awesome, because we can kind of start this. So Diane, unfortunately, there's some technical difficulties on my side, so I can't be showing the video, but I want to share that with everybody. Just like get everyone back up here.
I could probably do it at the end if there's time.
There we
Okay,
go.
great. Perfect.
Allow
Right,
me to share, if you allow me to share my screen later.
yes, I will do that. I just need your video. Okay, so we don't have any questions. I think there was a lot of information I think people were processing during this, but I have a couple of strong questions here. So the first one is, there are individuals developmentally disabled that live out of state, for example, Woods in PA, 5 developmental centers within New Jersey, that individuals receive the clinical supports that are not available in the community at this time. For the behavioral dually diagnosed in particular, services are limited as evidenced by families' feedback. Therefore, I'd like to use the word institution in a derogatory manner. Looking here, is it possible to address the type of housing for individuals' needs on an ICS level of care? So do you guys have any resources or anything like that that could help, we can help direct this person to?
I can tell you that we, it's now several years ago, but we built a project in Ramsey called Airmount Woods, which was purpose-built for folks with autism and with high need behaviors. And we used a design that was a monograph that came from Arizona State University called Opening Doors, the Opening Doors Report. Some of you may be familiar with the Southwest Autism Research and Resource Center, and Denise Resnick, who, by the way, recently opened up First Place, a residential project in Phoenix. And the idea with that project, Airmount Woods, we had done that in collaboration with the Housing Mortgage Finance Agency and also with DDD. Mm-hmm. And at that time, there was an extraordinary, well, I shouldn't say extraordinary, but a large number of people who were living in Camp Hill and then Framingham, Mass at the New England School and other places, because there was no appropriate level of care or service within the state of New Jersey. So folks were living outside of the state, and very difficult, obviously, for parents and siblings. So the idea was to create a model home that could be lather, rinse, repeat, that we could take that basic design, leverage it, change the exterior aesthetic as needed to fit into a given community, and build all of those homes and address the 600-700 people who at that time who were living outside of the state of New Jersey. That was the plan. And then everything blew up with the state transition plan and this what we call the rule of 4, where people could not live in groups of more than 4. At least that was the interpretation of the home and community-based service model that came out of CMS. Clearly now with Florham Park and 102 individuals, that has been set aside. But that original plan with DDD to build a more enriched community setting for folks who required it needs to be dusted off. I can't tell you that that's happening. I can say that Amy Scartocci is the new director of housing for DDD and is very interested in talking more about innovative housing models, very supportive of the project in Florham Park and some of the other projects that we're doing, particularly with mixed populations. So I think there's an opportunity now that some of the drama, if you will, around that state transition plan has seemed to die down and they've become more flexible. I'll revive the thought because it was our plan to do more housing to serve that particular group of people.
I agree. I agree with Tom. It really starts with DDD investing more money in doing that because it can be done for sure. And I know that last year they did put some money aside for that because they know that that population, especially dual diagnosed, that they haven't really invested in that population, and they did set aside certain dollars for that. But there's not enough. And if they want to get people coming home from out of state where they had been placed because there was not opportunities here, then they need to create those opportunities here. So you're right. And more needs to be done. We should be, closing most of our institutions, really. That was the whole idea, right?
Interesting. Diane, would you mind putting your video on so we can
it's
see
giving
you?
me an error. It says that you have stopped my video. That's what it says.
Okay, well, let me fix that while we're talking. Okay. I'll move on to the next question and figure out what's going on there. All right, it says, is it not too late to apply for the housing project in Florham Park? The application deadline has passed.
It's not too late. The application should still be up on the website. If there's any difficulty, let me know. As I mentioned, we still have, there's 102 bedrooms, so we're still accepting applications.
Wonderful. Okay, and as for the Florham project, another question for that. Wouldn't it have been better to have the affordable units intermixed with the Pulte community instead of being segregated in essence to a separate area of the site?
Arguably, yes, but that wasn't in the world of the possible at the time that the project was being planned. The Pulte project is an age-restricted 55 and older. And that was part of the negotiation that Pulte had as part of its site plan hearing with the Borough of Florham Park. So that kind of, that possibility simply didn't exist. Having said that, Pulte does have, I believe it's 12 units, it might be 18, of inclusionary affordable housing for 55 and older individuals who meet the income requirements. So there is some infill affordable housing. Our project was really an approach to supportive housing that we felt was the opportunity to create a different kind of muse-like feel and have a community that was different than an institution, different than a developmental center, an opportunity for us to demonstrate that there could be, that there could be a housing project that did not have any of those characteristics. That was quite dynamic and lively. And I think, remains to be seen, of course, until everyone moves in, but, so far so good.
Great. Good news. Okay. So how long do these projects take from start to finish? That's a really good question. I'm sure you have a lot to say about that one, depending.
Well, it varies. We're just completing now a 5-bedroom group home in Fort Lee that we bought the property, demolished the house, and arranged for the financing in less than 2 years. So that's one component. And then the project in Fairlawn, the 85-unit affordable senior project that we hope to get a CO for on September 30th, that project started in 2011. So that's a 9-year gestation period. That's a bit at the extreme. So it really depends upon a lot of different kinds of conditions. Some of that had to do with financing or the availability of tax credits in Fairlawn. In the case of Fort Lee, it was a particularly agreeable mayor and council because we had already done a project in Fort Lee who were absolutely full speed ahead. So, and also obviously a smaller project, but when you have commitment and you have willingness, you can go pretty fast.
Great. Well, that's good to hear. And it's good to hear it's moving faster too. And I guess another question is Ridgewood already full? So you're probably gonna get you had a lot of examples. So people are gonna be wondering about all of them, I think.
Is Ridgewood already full? Is that the question? No, it's not. In fact, Ridgewood is, we haven't even opened up the application process for the apartments yet. And we are only, we completed the demolition, we just started construction, and the reason my hair is getting grayer is we're not actually fully financed on that job. We're actually, the Housing Mortgage Finance Agency is visiting tomorrow. So they're still in the process of underwriting, but we began the job with confidence that they would because of the compelling nature of the project. But there's no guarantee that they will, but they're the last piece of the puzzle. And just to give you a sense, the Federal Home Loan Bank is invested in that project. The county home program through the community development program is invested in that project. The Village of Ridgewood has put their municipal housing trust fund into the project. So the risk I feel I'm taking, and it is a bit of a risk, is that how can the county community development home program put $1 million into this project? How can the Village of Ridgewood put $500,000 into this project? How can the Federal Home Loan Bank put another $500,000 into this project? And we need another $500,000 from the Housing Mortgage Finance Agency. How can they possibly not join those other funders to help us complete the project? So that's the roll of the dice I've taken, but I'm pretty confident because it's a great project that they'll come through in the end. But we were knocked, the challenge we face is that COVID knocked everything off its pins, and the Housing Mortgage Finance Agency, everyone's working remotely, so just difficult to get that underwriting done in a timely manner, and we needed to start the project. So we went for it. We'll see what happens.
Okay, so people are asking for your contact information. I will share that with everyone when I do the follow-up with the recording on Thursday. So make sure that everyone has all that information. As you've been speaking about budgets to operate these developments, my question is, what happens if organizations go bankrupt? What happens to the individuals who live there? Does that risk exist?
I don't think that risk exists. The project in Forum Park, as an example, has no debt on it. And we have all kinds of codicils and memorandums of understanding, and that if for some reason our organization runs into choppy waters, that there's a cure period and then there's a process to name a successor. Now, of course, anything can happen, as we have obviously seen this year, but we're financially sound. We have a robust and involved board of directors, and there is the elements of a succession strategy in place should I be hit by the proverbial bus. So I'm confident that, we've been around since 1962, so I'm confident that the organization will continue for quite some time.
All right, let's see. Can you discuss your partnerships with service providers once housing is developed?
Sure. We're not service providers. So in the case of let's use the group home in Forum Park, we worked out an arrangement with Pillar NJ. We know them very well. There's good chemistry. We investigate the partners that we have contracts with, because our reputation, of course, is on the line as well. So in addition to Pillar, we work with Everest. We work with New Horizons, who is a service provider in the in Airmount Woods, the project in Ramsey I mentioned earlier. We're working with Fordham Lewis Consulting, and I'm missing somebody, I think, but we have a select group that we work with. We meet, we tour their facilities, they tour our facilities. We make sure that the value system is in place. In addition, we have now 3 housing services coordinators who work for us, and their job is to, on a day-to-day basis, interact with service providers, interact with our residents in the independent living apartments, interact with the service providers to those residents, and they'll visit day programs. So there's, I would say, a pretty holistic approach to the projects that we have and the communities that we've created, and we really kind of nurture them along and listen pretty carefully to see if there's any discordant notes, and we act quickly to resolve any roommate issues or any other difficulties that might be might come up. So we're very attentive. We're not remote by any means in terms of once a project is completed.
Okay, great to hear. Can a few families pool together resources to build one home for their adult children?
They can, and I think several have. Don't know that we're necessary in that process because they can certainly engage an architect, they can certainly engage a general contractor. We're certainly happy to link families with opportunities in municipalities if they exist. So yeah, it's something that's certainly been talked about quite a bit. And we'd happily aid and abet that process, where it makes sense, and we can add value, sure.
Okay, great. In Tom's information, this person is asking, there was a development in Colts Neck, that was listed. Can you tell me if there is an area being developed for adults on the autism spectrum in that area?
So Colts Neck is the example of what our intent was with Ramsey. With Airmount Woods, which was the lather, rinse, repeat. So while the Colts Neck, if you look at that rendering, looks very Colts Necky in terms of its exterior aesthetic, the interior is almost an exact duplication of the floor plan that was created for Ramsey, which, by the way, is almost an exact duplication of the floor plan for Sweetwater Spectrum, the other project that utilized the opening doors report from SARC to build. So we have preliminary site plan approval in Colts Neck, but our site is interior to a much larger development that would require a considerable amount of site work done by the market rate developer to gain access to our site. So that everything is on hold. I hope one day that we'll be able to come back to that project. I'm not sure. But having said that, we're not too far away working on some projects in almost neighboring town, also in Monmouth County, with several sites that are very attractive and that will be supportive housing. So watch this space. There's more projects coming close to Colts Neck, and at some point, I suspect we will develop in Colts Neck.
Great. And that's good news to hear how much is being developed. I know all those slides, there were a lot of slides, which I think I will send out that presentation just so everyone can go through all the developments and the pre-developments that is happening currently in New Jersey. And one other question, do the municipalities have a deadline by which they need to build affordable housings, or is it each town governed by their own settlement agreement?
There's not an overall deadline, there's an individual deadline, and it is based on their settlement agreement. So, and this is where the performance equation comes in as a result of this change from what was the Council of Affordable Housing being, the so-called umpire, to now the county judge being the umpire. So the county judges, many of whom perhaps when they were privately practicing might have been land use attorneys or supported planning boards. So they weren't selected without some forethought in terms of their ability to have understanding about housing development. So they are now saying to municipalities, show me. So an example, we're working with a municipality where we need to get a site plan application submitted before the end of this year in order to show good faith. And we're perfectly happy to do that, but the municipality really needs to have that done in order to demonstrate back to the court that yes, they're taking their obligation seriously and they are taking the appropriate steps in good faith to achieve a housing development. So in a funny way, they're now pressing us to get busy, which we're happy to do. But that's an example of how in the settlement agreements, there are some real teeth in them in terms of chronology and timelines and specific accomplishments by certain dates. Some of those have been blurred and appropriately so as a result of the pandemic. But there's indications that some leeway will be provided, but some municipalities have to step lively.
Thank you for that answer. Just so you know, Diane, we lost Diane, so she'll be back on shortly. Can you have a support person for a disabled child living in one of your supportive housing apartments?
Probably not, because that person would need to meet the income requirements and the affordable housing requirements for and it's within, if it's like a 2-bedroom apartment, can we have someone with a diagnosis and then someone who was a caregiver? Would be difficult to pull off because of the regulatory framework with affordable housing and how we're complying with requirements for a given municipality. I'm not going to say we could rule it out, but it would be difficult because of fair housing and all of the attendant requirements in terms of advertising the availability of an apartment. Now, one thing we are doing is we have a project that we're doing with a service provider where we're creating apartments, family apartments, if you will, above a group home with the intent of renting those apartments to staff who work for the program. So we are working that through right now. So, but they're in separate apartments with kitchens and bathrooms. They're separate living units. Needs to be site plan approved, and we're in that process. But they're not. They'd be working in the group home and then perhaps walking upstairs to their apartment in the evening.
Okay, well so I didn't realize we're already at 8:27. We have quite a few questions that we still have. So what we can do, are you able to join us on October 6th? I believe that you are able to be one of our panelists or speakers, or I don't know if that was a challenge for you.
I can't, because we actually have a second hearing on a site plan application that same night in Hillsdale, so I wouldn't be able to join.
Okay, so what we could do is maybe, Tom, we can kind of have an offline Q&A video, you and I, to kind of address some of these questions that are here quite a bit,
Sure.
and maybe share that with the community. Sometime tomorrow, we can send that with a recording of this webinar so that a lot of these answers are, these questions are addressed, and also can work with Diane to get some of them as well. Unfortunately, we had some Zoom issues tonight, so that's always the fun part of webinars, is you have those technical issues that come up. But let me bring back Bruce. I know he always wants to kind of end the note and kind of say something for the audience. So Bruce, are you able to join us for the
Yes.
final words?
Yes.
I just need you to start your video and we're all set.
Okay. Oh, am I on the video? Okay.
Zoom.
I'll start my video. Okay, 1 second. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, I want to thank Diane and I want to thank Tom. They really presented a wealth of information, and it's really appreciated, and it'll be a big benefits to our parents. And again, I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. This is new to us, and I'm sure we'll get better as time goes on. I just, I want to encourage everyone to do a few things. I think, I know I went to SHA conference for the first time last year, and, and I got a wealth of knowledge. I really encourage you to get on the website of SHA and to also attend their conference. And I also encourage you to visit one of Tom's sites. I did, and it's really, the creative work he's doing is really remarkable. I know last week, Lisa, when she presented, I encourage you, she has a website also. There's always new information. She mentioned 3 advocacy groups, and she gave you the links. I really encourage you to get involved in that. And I know Tom referred to First Place in Phoenix, and I really encourage you to look it up. A lot of creative things are going on by people like Tom, like that's happening in Arizona. And I think things are very optimistic about a lot of possibilities. So I want to thank everyone very much. And we encourage you to attend the 3rd one, where you'd see some models that I know our adults go to and families were involved in. And we will have a Q&A, and we'll make answers to some of the things raised to Tom and Diane available to you. So thank you. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Brenda Considine, who's one of our consultants, for all her work in putting this together. And again, thanks to Melissa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Diana. Good night. Have a good night, everyone.
Right.
Good night.